Hello to friends from around the world. This is DW, normally with Ukraine Story, but here today in Paris for the 2024 Olympics for my good friend Jonathan Fink of Silicon Curtain Podcast. On this broadcast, we're going to be taking you through Paris and the story of a very unique and special group of athletes who have emerged here, 140 of them from a war-torn country, the nation of Ukraine. Ukrainian athletes have come here, and not just them, their families, their support teams, their coaches, 140, but not the number that would have been had it not been for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. More than 480 Ukrainian athletes have been killed by Russians. Some of them would have been Olympic contenders. They're not here today. That's on the mind of every single Ukrainian athlete that's gathered here. It's on the mind of the nation of Ukraine. Well, here this week, we're going to get together and meet, talk with a number of our athletes, including gold medal athlete Yaroslava Mahocek, who I sat down with for about 45 minutes at the Ukraine House, and our canoe silver medalist and several others who are here today. But we're also going to introduce you to just Ukrainians who have come here because they want this, the Olympics, to be a platform of helping the world to understand exactly what their nation is going through. Now, I'm not an Olympic historian. I would describe myself as a passionate student of Olympic history. And we look at past Olympics and we see landmarks in terms of the history of the West. The Paris 2024 Olympics happens 100 years after the 1924 Olympics. Some of you may know that for the famous Chariots of Fire story with Scotsman Eric Liddell. Or if you're a fan of old movies, you may remember Johnny Weissmuller, who played Tarzan, who was here in the 1924 Olympics. And there are ghosts and images and memories of 1924 all throughout Paris. But there's something which is really different. 1924 was a post-World War I year. 2024 is a different story. 2024 probably has its closest parallels to 1936, when nations from around the world gathered in Berlin under the oversight of the Third Reich of Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany, and they competed. What we learned in 1936 is that the Olympics becomes a platform for communicating a message to the world. And that's exactly what Hitler and the Third Reich did in 1936. There's a different message here in Paris in 2024. And that message is that those that are involved in aggression against sovereign nations are not welcome in the Olympics, with one very big exception. And the big exception is that here there are AIN athletes. These are athletes representing, not officially representing Russia or Belarus, but they're completely plugged into the Russian and Belarus athletic team. 40 of them came here. And as an observer over the course of this particular Olympics, I can say you don't see much of them here. You don't see Russian flags. You don't see Belarusian flags. At this particular point, they've earned a few medals, but that's about it. This is probably the most diminutive Olympics where Russians have been involved in a long time. Of course, we've come off the doping scandal in which Russia was excluded from the Olympics for some time. But Russians are not really welcome here. Belarusians are not really welcome here. True, they're here under AIN in small numbers, but by and large, the Olympic community here and the people of Paris, certainly the European community, have showed tremendous, I would say, respect and honor and gratitude for the people of Ukraine. Their presence here has been a warning to the world. Every single time a Ukrainian athlete wins, the first thing they do is talk about their love for their country. The first thing they do is to remind the world that 500 Ukrainian gymnasiums and athletic facilities have been blown up by Russians, that just under 500 Ukrainian athletes have been murdered by Russians, that their colleagues are not here with them today, and that when they go back home, they're not going back home to cities where everything is flowing beautifully and they live a normal life. No, they're returning to a world where every single Ukrainian has lost somebody. Every single Ukrainian has friends that have been killed, friends that have died, and cities are in a state of utter, complete desolation. I sat down with the much heralded Yaroslav Mahocek, and we spoke, along with other journalists that I was with, what Russia was doing to Ukraine and how that contrasted with the world here at the Olympics. Here are a few things she told us.
Watch this competition, even people who didn't understand sports, who didn't enjoy that, they turn on TV, look to athletics. For example, to me, I jumped and I showed that I'm from Ukraine. In Ukraine, we continue fighting for our liberty, for independence country, that the war is not not stop really yet. But you know, of course, sometimes I feel that European people tired a little bit about that because 2 years, more than 2 years, and of course it's terrible. But I always say, okay, you can help us to stop Russian, and the war will finish, and we all come back to Ukraine and will rebuild our country. So President Zelensky posts in Instagram where he congrats us, and it's really important for us because before the Olympic Games we had a Zoom meeting with him, and he said that it's really important to represent our country in this difficult time. Of course, I received a lot of messages, so I didn't read it all, really, but of course a lot of messages said, yes, you did it, and you're good luck with the next time. And one I received that one person wrote me after Tokyo that today you have bronze medal, but I believe that in Paris you will be a gold medalist and you will break the new world record. And today he said, yes, I was right. 2 years behind, really, of experience for that. But of course, it's difficult to focus on the track and field, but it gives me really some power, really power in track. And before my attempt to 10, I thought about that the people in Ukraine will so happy if I jumped now, because it's a good news in this terrible war, and I did it, and it really motivated me. So we are Ukrainian, we cannot not think about that because it's our country. We are citizens of Ukraine. So, and we want that the war will stop as soon as possible, and we rebuild all.
I just want to say that the time with Yaroslava was absolutely inspiring. This woman is one part lion. On the field, complete focus, an absolute lion. In person, she is just the sweetest individual. She's probably given, who knows, hundreds of interviews. The tears still flow in her eyes when she talks about Ukraine. You ask her, what are you going to do when you go home? She wants to be with her family. She wants to have coffee with her friends. She wants to be with the people of Ukraine and stand with them and encourage them. And during the break between the beginning of this podcast and right now, I looked to my right. I didn't know this was here when I started the podcast. I'm going to ask my cameraman to show you what we found on the bridge right here where my hand is standing. Come on up and do a little close-up of this. Slava Ukraine. Those are words we've been hearing throughout the world of the Olympics here in Paris. Europe cares about Ukraine. Europe cares a lot about Ukraine. America needs to wake up to Ukraine, which brings me to a very important point about this Olympics. Why should Americans care about Ukrainians at the 2024 Olympics? Well, now I'm speaking as an American. I have an American hat. I'm for Team USA. Love my country. I'm here for Ukraine this week because I believe not only that Ukraine must be supported to total comprehensive victory, that means complete victory, but that the West has an awful lot to learn from Ukraine. Over in my nation of the United States of America, we are in a state of identity crisis. Who are we? What do we believe? What do we stand for? What are we willing to fight for? We've lived in a nation where we really haven't had to endure invasions. We don't have to deal with the intensity of being in a constant state of war where our children on any given day are being faced with bombs. There are 2 Ukrainians that are competing tonight from Kharkiv. And this week, CNN did I think a really noteworthy piece on both of them. They're competing in artistic swimming, and they're twins. And in speaking to CNN, they described what it is to wake up to go to train. You want to go to the pool, but you hear bombs at the house next door. You're asking yourself, which of your friends have been killed? Will it be me today? And it becomes something which is just part of the daily rituals of life for a Ukrainian athlete, which is why so many Ukrainian athletes left Ukraine and had to travel outside the nation to find the facilities to prepare for the 2024 Olympics. These girls are going to be competing tonight. By the time you watch this broadcast, the outcome will already be completed, but as of now, at the moment of this broadcast, and we are now at the day before the end of the Olympics, as of this moment, Ukraine has captured 11 medals. Now just stop and think about that for just a second. 11 medals. They've been in a varying position between number 18 and number 15 overall medal count for the Olympics. So there are 204 Olympic committees that represent different nations that are actually here at the 2024 Olympics. And of those 204, Ukraine has been in the top 18, top 17, even as high as top 15, competing with some of the largest nations in the world. They fielded 140 athletes here. You just have to think about that. What does that mean? Who are these people that have come from war, desolation, destruction? They don't have massive government-funded athletic programs, as does Russia, as does China, as does other nations. Russia, of course, not competing here officially here, but they have to do it on their own. And they've come out here and they've worked, and there is a spirit inside each of these athletes. It's absolutely infectious. It's completely infectious. I want to take you to an interview that I did with Anastasia Rybacek, silver medalist in canoe. We met her right after her preliminary win that brought her to the medal round, which was the next day. And we said, you know, you were essentially opposed by the International Olympic Committee for writing "I am Ukrainian" on your canoe. How do you feel about that? You can hear what she said. Your canoe says Ukraine.
I am Ukrainian.
That's right. And they said,
It's my national. I write my national. It's normal, but not normal for ICF. But
did you have to
it's
pay
no problem. I take another boat and go to race. It's no problem for me.
There were 10,000 Ukrainians in America who saw your canoe and they said, they were so proud of you. So you still feel good?
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Gold medal today.
Not today, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I also want you to hear this message that she shared in Ukrainian to the people of Ukraine. Every athlete, Anastasia being one example of it, wants the world to know, I'm Ukrainian, I stand with my nation, we are at war, we are not simply athletes here, we are representatives of a nation that's fighting for its very existence.
Я Анастасія Рибачок, передаю вітання всім українцям в Америці. Слава Україні!
If you've been watching the 2024 Olympics, you're probably not watching it on a major network, but scrolling and seeing episodes through social media. This is the social media Olympics. You'll remember back in 2016, social media was in a very different place. You'll remember back in 2020 or 2021, which is when the 2020 Olympics took place, there wasn't audiences here. There weren't people here. We were in the middle of COVID. So now, in the year 2024, it's a new world of communication at the Olympics. And we're seeing people emerge. I think of this incredible American female rugger who led the rugby team. She was one of many, of course, but who has become the most famous American rugby player in the world as a result of social media. Similar things have happened with Ukrainians now getting their message out through social media. And it shows that the importance of constant communication, of people seeing these athletes walking around, talking, showing their personalities, how they train, being human beings. And of course, that's something that Ukraine needs desperately. They need to humanize, or they need to be humanized to the American people that have received so much Russian propaganda, dehumanizing the people of Ukraine. Of course, the position of the Russian dictator, although communicated different ways, has largely been, they're not even a people. There is not even such a thing as Ukraine. They belong to us. We made up the country. It isn't their own nation. Well, Ukrainians don't take well to that because, of course, it's a galactic lie, but it's something that people hear through social media. Well, now at the Olympics, we're flipping it up on its head in that every single Ukrainian that's here is competing, is getting on social media, reaching thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people, not only showing their wins, showing their personality, showing their love for their country, showing who they are. That builds humanity between our nations, and it's one of the victories of the Paris 2024 Olympics. Everyone has the sport that they're partial to. I have a number of them. I formerly played rugby. I'm very partial to rugby. Ukraine wasn't in rugby. United States didn't make it to the medal round, but they did tie the French in a preliminary round, which interestingly enough was 100 years after they played the French for the gold medal, USA winning the gold medal in 2024. But I'm also a fencer. I love fencing. Fencing is a sport which on the international level has actually been dominated by Russian oligarchs. After February 24, 2022, they were essentially asked to separate from the Olympic Committee. That doesn't mean their influence is gone, but fencing is a sport that in Ukraine, in Russia, it's very personal to people. Well, Ukraine has the greatest of the greatest of the greatest. And at this Olympics, we were shouting and cheering with utter excitement for Olga Carlin. You have to understand this woman. This woman is a ferocious defender of her nation. She loves her nation, and she's also a killer in the fencing arena. Back as early as 2008, a 17, 18-year-old Olga Carlin came to the Olympics where she medaled for the first time. This year was her 5th medal, maybe her 6th medal, we'll have to double check that, where she won she won bronze, and then ultimately in team saber, she brought home gold. But some of you may remember that Olga lost gold in international competition when she refused to shake hands with a Russian competitor. What many people don't realize is that under the rules of COVID in fencing, fencers were allowed to touch swords. That's a practice that continues to this day. But the official rules have said you have to shake hands. How does a Ukrainian who's had his family tortured, murdered, raped, nations destroyed, in a state of war, losing their children, how do you go up and shake hands with someone that represents Vladimir Putin? You can't do it, you shouldn't do it. That's Olga Carlin's message, and she wouldn't do it. They took it away. Ultimately, they gave it back to her, thankfully. But here this week, when she held up that very first bronze, her message to the world was, it may be a bronze, but for the people of Ukraine, this is a gold, because any win we have here is a message to all of Ukraine. We are present, we are not giving up, we are fighting, and Slava Ukraini. What happened in the world of women's fencing here was simply stunning. Olga Carlin, national hero from Ukraine, defender of Ukraine, spokeswoman for Ukraine, wins bronze in individual saber. And she holds up that bronze and she gives a message to the world, maybe a bronze, but this is a gold for Ukraine. And with passion, emotions, she shares her love for the country that will never surrender, will never give up. And what's happening here in Paris is a representation of that fighting spirit. But that was just the beginning, because several days later, she would come back with the women's saber team and they would win gold in this historic moment, an incredible moment for the nation of Ukraine, all of Ukraine rejoicing with women's saber gold. It's not just another sport. It's a sport that Russia has attempted to dominate, and here at the 2024 Olympics, with Olga Carlin leading the way, Ukraine sent shockwaves through the world and showed their presence as a fighting nation.
Some athletes, they lost someone, some athletes are on the front line. We have some athletes who died on the war, and they can't be here, so of course it's difficult, it's tough on the heart, on the soul. But we are here for all Ukraine, we represent our country and we're so proud of that, we're honored. And all these medals we represent it to Ukraine and dedicated to our troops who are defending us. And everything for that. Heart, I have different emotions. Right now I have part happiness because I can bring all these medals to my country, which is also brought some joy for people, some minutes of cheering, listening item and everything, and to see flag. And at the same time I have really sad emotions, of course, and devastating for what's happening every day, bombing every day, killing people every day. And we are losing people every day.
If you're Ukrainian and you are here at the Paris 2024 Olympics, yes, you are obsessively interested in what's happening with your world-class athletes. No question. You're following the details, you're waiting for the latest news, you're counting the medals, you want to get visuals on them, you're walking around the city seeing if you can bump into them, but there's something else which is on your mind, and that is identifying as a Ukrainian and letting the world know you identify as a Ukrainian. Well, thankfully, Volia Space, sponsored by Ukraine House, here at the 2024 Olympics is one of those safe spaces where Ukrainians and friends of Ukraine can come and gather and not only watch on the big screen their athletes compete, but can experience different elements of Ukrainian culture. I recently went to Ukraine House and we were able to see, I guess what I could describe as the ultimate lesson on how to make borscht by one of Ukraine's most famous chefs.
Kalina, I don't know how to translate this one. Some onion, some some cognac, some honey, some steppe mushrooms, some apple, some millet, some green pea, and some Jerusalem artichoke. And it's going to be something new Ukrainian borscht, which we'll call Voля Space. The name of this place is Voля Space, that's why I want to create this borscht. Пізнавали наші справжні українські спеції, з якими українська кухня може бути крутою і сучасною, і ще більш популярною, які ми маємо там зробити. Але ми дозволяємо бути креативними, знаєте. Білі гриби, яблука, пшоно, цибуля паре, зелений горошок і топінамбур.
One of the more touching moments that I experienced was visiting the Ukraine House and watching our 3 Olympic medalists in athletics, track and field, not only speak to their fellow Ukrainians, but take the time to talk to the children, to sign books for the children. Here's what it looked like.
Я вважаю, стрибки у висоту, все ж таки стрибаємо у висоту. Я дуже люблю це відчуття, коли ти перелітаєш через планку, коли ти своїм тілом відштовхуєшся і ось відчуваєш цю гравітацію. Це дуже круто. Я хочу відчувати її далі, щоб летіти ще вище до небес.
Або шоколадка, або банани. Я також
Приходь до нас у сектор.
Мені недалеко.
Я навпаки не можу нічого їсти в секторі.
Всі по-різному реагують на той самий стрес. Тобто комусь треба поїсти, комусь треба...
І, в принципі, завжди всі війни зупинялися на період, але Росія не зупинилася, і в період цих ігор були масовані атаки на міста України. І тому, як терориста можна допустити до змагань про мир?
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wow.
Well, thank God for the opportunity.
Це фотограф, тобто в нього спеціальний проєкт, він робить фото, але на вулиці. Ви могли швиденько зробити фото зараз? Чи ви вже маєте їхати? Його суттєво йде тут фото.
Так, я думаю, що так. Якщо не забрали, то фотографуємо.
Боже, чого я не взяла прапор? Яка класна ідея.
Не можна? Так, аж на. Ні. Дякую, дуже дякую.
Excusez-moi, messieurs, dames, ne montez pas sur scène, s'il vous plaît.
Можна з вами сфоткатися? Так,
By the way, if you're watching this broadcast, let me ask you to share Jonathan Fink and Silicon Curtain's YouTube channel with every friend you know. Jonathan has been in the trenches now for a long time. We need to get these messages out there. People need to understand the facts. They need to hear what is really going on. And Silicon Curtain is a wonderful way to do that. Share this YouTube channel. Jonathan Fink is a hero. He's doing a great job. I love him. And Vive la France, a friend from over there. Great spirit here. Share the YouTube channel. Well, I want to thank you for joining me on this special edition of Silicon Curtain. This is DW with Ukraine Story. We're a documentary reporting and film and journalism foundation dedicated to telling stories of faith, hope, courage, and defiance against Russian aggression in the nation of Ukraine. Thanks for joining me here today on behalf of Jonathan Fink at the Paris 2024 Olympics. In our next and final broadcast, we'll be telling the story of what are the big takeaways for the nation of Ukraine at Paris 2024. We'll see you there.